Okay. Welcome back to the Natural Awakening podcast with me, your host, Wiston. And today, delighted to have Corey Hess on as my guest here. Corey, for those who don't know you, some already will be familiar, but could you just give, in as much or as little detail, who you are, what you do, where you're coming from, and what you offer these days?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Um, I guess I'm a dad. It's mostly what I am. I I trained in Japan in my 20s with Shoto Harada, Roshi, great Zen Rinzai Zen master. And um, now I've been home for about 20 years. And right now, what I'm doing is I'm leading this international group of practitioners in online classes and in retreats. And we do a lot of standing and movement meditation as well as sitting. Um, but yeah, I had real beautiful changes in Japan and a lot of struggles. And a lot of those struggles really gave me the tools to be able to help people a little bit. And after about, I don't know, must have been about 5, 10 years after I got back from Japan, I started writing a blog, and that's where most people learned about me. And they started asking questions, and most people like either they've had some kind of profound awakening, they've had, or they're kind of in just walking around, kind of key problem, energetic problem, walking around, or yeah, right. A lot of rising key. Had some kind of kundalini, want to call it, or they've had a lot of training and they're looking to deepen that. I get people who are really advanced practitioners in some form of meditation, but they're looking to deepen that. And and so those are who I work with. It's really beautiful. You see people changing. Yeah, it's a really sweet group. I'm lucky. I kind of started teaching these classes when the pandemic just kind of started, and we were all just in our living rooms doing stuff, and then it blossomed, and now we kind of full on. Yeah, so it's beautiful. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
having
I
me.
think yeah, delighted to have you on. I think I found you through your blog some years ago, and I am also in contact and go on retreat at Korenji. So I saw some of your involvement in the Rinzai Zen Facebook group. Thanks for moderating that and being active there.
Yeah,
Um, so if folks want to learn more about Corey, his story, his process, I would recommend sincerely checking out his blog. There's some older stuff on one website, and newer stuff's all on Substack, I think. Um, and then he's on his website. He's got a couple of podcasts going into a lot of depth about his path and practice so far. So if you'd like more of that biographical detail and a little bit about the training at Sogenji and some of the blossomings and openings that and unfolding, I think you've already talked a lot in detail and written about in places. So uh, before we hopped on, I was wondering like what new angle here, if not that we need to be novel, but you mentioned the nitty gritty. What for someone who is maybe is in it,
hey,
has this kind of and sometimes folks will I teach mindfulness and meditation more in a secular context. Sometimes people will come to me with these kind of what in Zen might be called a rising key problem, where there's some kind of congestion or excitation, and people are having, all of the strange phenomena that can happen when that starts to open. For someone who's in it,
yeah,
what
my
what's the process there for working with that? How if someone comes to you who's fresh, fresh from some kind of energetic opening or eruption. Um,
Yeah.
what does that process look like when you work with someone through that?
Well, so one tool, one part of that is that we training with Shoto Harada, we're dealing with tendon, the lower dantian, 2 or 3 centimeters below the navel, and this is like day one and day 1,000 in like the monastery. So it's not like, well, you do the tendon a little bit and then you kind of go on to the good stuff. It's not like just the beginner practice. And tendon is elusive. It's never ending. It's always changing. And the tendon is a kind of tool to energetically um, open up to reality. And it's a super old, archaic process, maybe coming from India through China, and then kind of channeled through a particular Japanese Rinzai style. And I this Rinzai style is not it's not everywhere. It's in especially certain teachers are working in this way. And my teacher Shoto Harada was this sort of energy master, and so we're working from that as the context, tandem as the context, energetics as the context, and then the ideas and everything around it are usually they're secondary. He's not interested in ideas about it at all, and so you're learning this cellular process of opening up energetically, partly through the tandem, and so a lot of times what I do when people come, they've had some thing open. Maybe that's been really beautiful, and yet their body wasn't really able to handle it. So they've had something happen, and then their body may be locked up. Like certain areas will really lock up because they haven't really done this internal alchemy work to be able to process this energy. And so a lot of what I do is I help people to feel what's really going on. Maybe they've had a little glimpse of something and their body got kind of fried from this glimpse. And so I get them into their bodies and I get them feeling what's actually going on. And that's extremely creative. And I create a venue for people to where we have often the stimulation gets lower, and because we're in a room standing or sitting, and then we begin to slowly feel what's really going on for them, and then they start to open up to a bigger process that's happening through them.
You
Yeah.
mentioned this bigger process. I think that's a phrase or some turn on that phrase you come back to often that I think you referred to it as this great life energy is that's what's trying to happen all of the time. I
Yeah.
really appreciated that framing of it. There can be that kind of figure ground reversal, that flip.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I had such difficulties in my process, and I was working so hard. I was the Rinzai world is. I'm not here representing Rinzai, by the way. Like I'm not trying to be like and but I did kind of grow up in that, and but I'm happy to be a rebel also, but but I'm kind of over it in certain ways. But in the training, it's very intense, and you think you're doing it, you're trying so hard, you're going for it, and I did that, and I was working so hard, and at a certain point, my body just kind of seized up on me. Everything all stopped on me, and and in that, I saw that like I'm actually fighting reality all the time with what I'm trying to do, with how I'm trying to approach my practice, get enlightened, open up, do the Tandem work. It was all this. I actually was kind of pushing past reality with all of my efforts. And what I saw was when I had to profoundly stop when I got sick in the monastery, I had to just stop. I saw that I was laying in this room in the tatami room in the dark, and And I saw at a certain point, I got just profoundly honest that there was something still there. It was something, it was as big or more, it was bigger than what I had been trying to do. And that was there all the time. And I realized I could learn to let go into this bigger process that was there all the time trying to happen. And, there are a lot of terms like crush your bones and in the Rinzai world. And what that did for me was it showed me that crushing your bones actually is giving yourself so profoundly to this bigger process that's happening. It's not about um, having an effort which is vulgar. It's actually there's something bigger trying to happen, and giving myself to that 100, 1,000%. And that's where, things started to profoundly change for me. So that's the bigger process that's trying to happen. Um, and you see people start to get that. They start to make a little change.
And of
Yeah.
course, people want to know, well, show me what's the formula, what's the operation, the algorithm? How do you tap into that main line?
Yeah, I know. Well, and again, the thing is, it's like for everyone, they think that like their experience is not valid. My experience is wrong, and I've got to have a different experience in order to reach this. I've got to go to a higher experience, and then I'll be in contact with this thing, okay, this bigger thing. And what you see when people really start to get honest, like, okay, here I am in space. I have no idea what's fucking going on right now. And I'm here's the room, here's my body, and I feel terrible. Why do I feel terrible? And when they start to feel this, they start to see, oh, maybe there's really something going on here that I couldn't notice. I didn't know how to feel it. And so what I'm feeling right now, what I'm feeling, that's my gateway in. It's not like that I've got to do something else to get that gateway in. And when people start to see that, I mean, cellularly in their process, this internal process, when they start to see that, it becomes their own beautiful, magical kind of process that starts to happen. And so, the formula is this kind of idea that people want, and actually, it's much closer to their experience that they need to interact with it.
I was very struck by one of the videos that you recorded that's on your channel, talking about your process with the Mu koan.
Yeah,
Uh, this at first, it being something that you
yeah,
could or could not do, that you could take it up or put it down, or that you're placing it outside of yourself. And people do this with breath, they do this with mantra, they do this with whatever the technique is. It's something that you're taking upon, you're kind of yoking your attention to
yeah,
in that bifurcated way.
yeah,
Um, how do you invite people into softening that and taking it, realizing that it's not someplace outside of.
yeah.
How do you help that?
I and that's where the body really can come in, because you know what happens is um people just they're in their heads about it, and then the head, obviously we need our minds, we need to think, obviously, but um there's a lot of hook in our minds about and we can kind of get caught in this stream about that. Okay, but what the body does is it's a way to just be in the present, in physically in this room. And when people start to do that, um that's when they see that, oh, there's something more interesting happening than my thoughts. And when that happens, that becomes more the main conversation is, oh, there's something really interesting happening. My thoughts might be there, okay, or they might disappear at times, but there's something more interesting happening. And when that starts to happen, it changes them. They get feedback from that this is what I need to be doing. And so that slowly takes over more and more. It was this like thing on the sideline, you're in the soccer game and the coach is over there. But at a certain point, it's like, oh, this is the main thing that's happening. And then you give yourself more to that and more to that. And and then you see, oh, that's actually where I am that's where I am. That's who I am. That's where I am. And I don't need to go somewhere else to make it happen. And you see people that spend 30, 40 years, they're going somewhere else. They're going to go somewhere else. Um, and it's very scary it's very scary for most of us to not reach out and try to fix something or try to create something or try to fix ourselves or have a goal that we're diving at. So when you stop that, it's disorienting for people not to dive out. When they stop and they're just letting things come to them, that's very confusing for people. So I give them a venue where they can't do that. You can't leap out. Just stay where you are. And
Stand. Hold this posture.
hold, hold this stupid posture. Hold this and and feel or stand there and feel. Um and so it's really, and people say, well, Corey, you're about embodiment, right? Or your work's about embodiment. And uh, it's more that the body is this beautiful tool to help us open up to this bigger thing that's happening. So instead of being this top, this floating head exploring reality, we start to see, oh, that's not the whole deal. There's something much bigger that can come through, and the body kind of gives us this venue to not be in our heads about it and start to discover this bigger thing. Mhm.
And one of the I forget which of the interviews is, but you feel it yourself, and you also see it in other people. Whether there's kind of people are living below the neck, the
Yeah,
movement changes, the breath changes, the everything
yeah,
changes.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And you start to kind of what happens with the Tandem work is that this is a big topic, okay, but what happens with the Tandem work is you start to function more from the Tandem and less from like your mind, okay, and obviously this is advanced, but so instead of filtering everything through your mind, walking around filtering everything through your mind, you start to work from this open place. And so when someone asks you a question, it'll kind of spring out of this tandem, this big process. And that's just it's so different than the way most people are walking around. So you often, when you see that species, you're kind of like, okay, I can see that species. I get them. They're coming from that place. And um, so yeah. Um, yeah, and increasingly I'm less being a cheerleader for traditional Zen or Buddhist practice because I don't think that everyone needs to go and do extreme monastic training. I don't think they need to put on archaic Japanese clothing or shave their heads. That was a really great venue to like strip down and go for it. But I'm more interested in having people see that, oh, there's something really possible working with myself or with someone who has really gone through a lot with it and has changed. That I think I like working with normal people. I think that's what's really helpful right now.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm curious. You've probably answered this elsewhere and talked about it a bunch in the blog, but coming out of that intense training environment with a newborn child, then figuring out how to be of service. I remember one phrase as well. I forget where you put, but how to be a person with that opening, coming from that place. How uh,
I know.
uh,
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, um, what the process was like for me was that I had to go. I like giving myself to this thing that was trying to happen. Okay, that was like I had to throw everything everything away to do that. Like I had to give everything to that, and I loved it. By the way, it wasn't like
And you kind of
torture.
had to.
Had to, yeah, and
There
I
was
loved
no.
it. Yeah, and going more and more and more into that, you become so open and so vulnerable, and in that, I kind of came out of that like this newborn baby. You're kind of just you're wide open, you're unskillful, you're living kind of in this magical realm. And but I was like I wasn't skillful at all with people. I wasn't like people could manipulate me. I and so I was only in the monastery like for like a year or something after that happened. And then I went out and we had to like start a family and be people, and I was like a carpenter and have a newborn baby and honestly when people open up to this process, it's a long process. Even if you have a big opening, it's a long process that you you just slowly it guides you how to open up to it more and more and more. But I'm in the midst of my life trying to be a person, and yeah, I was like, you know, unskillful. I wasn't very good with people at first. I was too intense. I was, with my focus, I was laying on top of people, like talking to them. Yeah, right, and uh, and all that, and so no, it took me a long time to kind of gel, kind of unify with what was happening. I was very good at it in a certain way, but in order to mature and ripen in that, to be able to kind of come from this open place all the time, that's a whole beautiful big ripening process. They call it ripening the sacred embryo, and it's why like Daito Kokushi lived under a bridge for 20 years, because you're there, your cells are all reforming but there I was, with the newborn baby, being
I mean, living under a bridge,
yeah,
becoming a parent, that seems quite, different, but uh, grounds for ripening training.
yeah,
I
right.
imagine, not being a
Yeah.
parent
Oh,
myself.
man. Yeah, I mean, you're married?
Yeah, I am married. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, cool, cool. Um,
And
yeah,
relationship in concert and in dialogue with that kind of intense training uh,
yeah,
has been a challenge and a joy, both.
yeah. Um, so honestly, the feedback for me was that if I wasn't with this process, this energy, if I wasn't with it, then I was suffering. I was I was all locked up. So the feedback again is clear. Like you got to get with it. You can't like open up and then kind of check out. You got to be with it. And so that was just a long process. And actually, I did a lot of creative things to work with that. And then I started writing the blog. And part of what the blog was for me was um, it was bringing it through my body and in a way to communicate and relate with people. Um, to be with people, and when I would write something and it would feel like, oh, that's dripping with this truth, this essence, then I would publish it. And if it didn't, oh man, I feel like I need an oil change. I've said something that isn't quite jiving with this process, and so it was a way for me to like a compass to figure out, oh, okay, I can stay with this and express myself and be with people, and then I became a therapist, and I work with people one on one for like a long time, and and that was my little laboratory for okay, when I'm with people, how do I meet them and how do I not plow into them or get manipulated or get pushed around or get I'm too open or vulnerable, so someone will kind of screw with me, and and so I had to find that, and that so I had this little laboratory of being with people one on one, and oh, okay, I can slowly working with them, but actually I'm also the one that's really learning, and and like a little baby, you learned, okay, I can take a step and I can stay with it, and like, okay, I can do that, I can be with this process. Yeah, and being a husband and a father, man, it's like, I have these three daughters, so they any anywhere that I'm being this, whatever, chauvinist or anything, or if I'm being closed-minded, they just check me. All the hidden little sneaky places where you think you're pretty cool, they will check that immediately. So I'm so lucky to have that actually. Yeah,
Yeah, I it's wonderful to see someone who's done the training that you have done and is functioning in the world as you are. Just a regular, you got a family, you're working, you're active in the world. Um,
right.
so thank you for doing that.
We need it, don't we? Need it. I know.
Yeah,
Like, and I think this is a problem, but like, so like Shoto Harada, my teacher, he's like he's this extreme person, and that's good, but and it really helps us. It helped us a lot. And but the model of what it was to be a really a master was that was confusing for most of us at a certain point where you how do you actually express this in the world as a person? So we had to kind of learn that on our own, and that's a big leap. It's a big leap.
yeah, coming, a feudal Japanese monastic culture, uh, that's
Yeah.
quite different. And trying to just take that root and stem and transplant it into the soil here.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to Korenji next month, and I'm so grateful that that is there for
Right.
those who need it and want it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not that's not going to work for most people, and I feel like there needs to be different expressions
Yeah.
serving the different needs of people here that is not met necessarily by that kind of training
Right.
and by that environment. So that's thanks for trying to figure that out and modeling it a bit.
And I think a good thing about Mato is that um he's not asking people to do that. It's basically like a um it's a monastic lay practice there. People come and then they
Yeah,
go. And even if they're priests, they go. They don't. And so Genji, you're there for 20 years and he's kind of saying you don't have it yet. So not that he wanted people to stay there, but I think Mato's working with people who are basically lay people coming and going. That I think that helps that process for people.
yeah. I mean, you said this in another interview. Even Sogenji, it's not kind of a high sodo as some training regimes. It was more fluid, more open, more flexible. Um,
Okay, that's a good question. So I think the Sodo is that's more like you do come for periods of time and then you leave, and people are there for 3 years and then they're done. And
mm,
so and that's normally how the Sodo works, and it's very regimented. Um, but so Genji, there's no free time. There's no time off there. You're just there. And so in that way, it's more intense and not better, but in that way, the Roshi kind of, and he doesn't really allow people who are Japanese to come and try to be priests there. They take their 3 years and then they get out and be a priest
right, sure.
because he's trying to get people there um, to dive in until they die completely.
Yeah,
That's his
yeah.
opinion.
That that makes
So
sense.
yeah, but yeah. So I'm not saying that's better though.
Yeah.
But most of us, we came from far away, so we didn't really have anywhere to go for that off time in the Sodo. Yeah, yeah, um, yeah.
Mm. Wondering which thread to pick up. Do you have an idea? Direction?
Well, see. I don't know.
Okay, so this is actually a question that came in from somebody who's in one of your groups. I don't know their name. They were using an anonymous account to ask the question, so I don't know who this is, but they're in one of your groups apparently. Um, uh, how is your practice group different from, but is building on Rinzai Zen? So maybe just say more about what what the work, the process that you're facilitating on is. It's obviously coming from your training there, but it is different from perhaps more adapted to this cultural context for some people. Um, you know,
Um, okay. Um, so in one way, we're not doing Rinzai training at all. Like we're standing mostly. We're we're not chanting sutras. We're not playing the Han. We're not we're not doing we do kinhin, I guess you could say, but we're not really doing much of the form at all. Um, and so in that way, um, it's it's very different than Rinzai being the training being this form which you use to dive into this essence and this true nature through this training over and over, this highly structured environment to tune into this process that's happening. And but I would say personally, I would say that I feel like I am very much loyal to the Roshi's what he's really sharing. So I I feel like much of even Rinzai training is um, not really touching this deep essence, which is what the training is really about. The training is not really about whether or not you're good at folding up your jihatsu or washing your bowl, all that shit that people get obsessed with, or how good their Japanese is, and how well they can fold up their zagu or whatever, and and so but I feel very, very much that I'm sharing the Roshi's what he's really this clear nectar that he showed me. So in that way, I feel very much like I'm in that tradition, although I'm not using the form in the same way.
yeah.
So how can I describe that? When you're with people in training, they come and they're kind of again, they're this walking kind of problem. They're going this way, but they're also going that way. Their bodies are all tight. Um, uh, they're often deeply frustrated internally. They have something called the great doubt, where they feel like there's something they have to touch in order to go on with their lives before they can, or they'll die. And and so then as they go along with their training, something starts to happen and they start to become really beautiful. Like it's almost like this transformation starts to happen and they don't even quite understand it, but there's something beautiful that starts to shine through them. And it's like they got this little, they're like criminals, like, I found something. I don't found it. And that starts to come through them more, and then their whole life starts to kind of change with that. And it might not be completely they might not completely understand it mentally, but they start to deeply change. And then they give in more and more to that process, more and more. And then everything they do is basically coming from that place more and more and more. And then at some point, maybe they dive further and they have some big experience. Okay. But but I feel very loyal to that process. That's my experience. And that's what I feel like I'm sharing with my group. I'm not sharing whether or not, how all these stereotypes that you get into that people love to fetishize about in Zen, like I'm really good at cleaning, or you know what I mean, or like You know what I mean? People get into Zen because they're bald, so I'll do it because it fits my aesthetic. You know what I
Well, there's a
mean?
lot of beautiful accoutrement, like the choreography, the form is beautiful and highly refined and lovely. And
It is.
it's a
It is.
craft. It's a
It
whole
is.
thing. Um,
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And yeah, I
and
love that
also
stuff.
it's yeah, it's a structure. It's a container uh, uh, for people who want to just throw everything away and into dying completely, like you said before.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked it. I loved it. And it worked for me. I was the worst, by the way. I was like, the roaches no don't mean the wrong way. I was the wrong way. Like I could never bow right. I was just this, like I was always messing up. So there's that too. It is this venue where you can screw up. And that's really good. And it's also a good place where you can be a real fool and you won't like in the world, you don't want to fall asleep while doing something, or you don't want to push yourself in a certain way. But in the monastery, you can, and maybe you stayed up all night because you were trying to do this, and then the next day you're a total mess. And then over time that all changes, but it's a venue to explore that. It's safe in that way, and that's good. That's good. So yeah, but yeah, I think I love the Rinzai training. It was very beautiful. Also, I wanted to say that, in my opinion, the Roshi never asked me to like he never said like Ichigen, you need to believe this. Like he never said like you need to become this Buddhist who believes this. And what happens is as you do the training, it gets in there. So you feel, oh, and then now like I like it's not like I believe in the Buddha. It's like I know the Buddha. It's like it's but
Eyebrow to eyebrow.
oh yeah, right. Yeah, I love that about it was a really rebellious environment, and I really needed that. I needed an environment where they weren't telling me you've got to be this, you've got to understand it in this certain way, you've got to believe this, and I needed that kind of rebellious environment where I could profoundly be creative in my exploration and push it and be a wild person in the midst of that. So so you don't need to believe necessarily. If you've got a deep question, you don't need to believe that. You don't need to have to be a good Buddhist even. I think that's worth noting for people.
And people get hung up on that. I mean, I
You-
certainly did, still do fall into it.
Yeah. Um,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, there's another thing from this same questioner. Practicing with a rebellious spirit, how it isn't about turning anything off. He asked if you could say something about that. You said a little bit about rebellion there, and bit of a Zen rascal.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how they phrase that, but I think what I would say about that is that I think people feel like their practice, even their zazen, is about when things come up, I turn away from them. I don't let them happen. I turn off. I turn off that, or I turn things down. I turn the volume down and I'll be calm. I'll turn everything down and then I'll find it. And and what you see when you get more and more honest with your process is that I have to face everything that's happening. I have to face that and I have to be with it. Most of us are in avoidance. And I think most of it's if we haven't felt our process enough, we can stew in this kind of confused, nihilistic, basically denying everything that's happening and think that's meditation. a lot of people are sitting in confusion for years thinking I'm meditating, and actually they're just basically they think it's emptiness, but they're just denying their experience constantly, and they think that's meditation. And what I would say is actually when we deeply face our process, often the volume turns up. We let everything in. Everything is coming through. And this is just, I think that can be pretty radical for people who they came into it. I'll find some equanimity, okay,
Some
with this.
peace, some calm, some quiet, some
I'll be
stillness, some
peaceful.
space.
Yeah, I'll get there'll be space, and I'll be in control in all my situations with people.
Safe and contained and secure.
I'm looking for something that's going to give me an environment where I can be safe, and I'm looking for a way that I can, some strategies where I can be in control with people. I want to be more in control. I actually want to be, I want my brain to be so clear that I'm faster at my control than everyone. People think that's the goal. Like Zen, I'll be faster because I'm so open. My brain will be faster and I'll be able to control everybody and I'll feel safe. And
Control the internal experience, control the environment, control
exactly,
relations and emotions, and
exactly. And instead, um, really, we have to be um, profoundly vulnerable. And this is so scary for most of us because we spent a long time trying not to be an idiot, trying not to say the wrong thing, trying to be um, good, trying to be beautiful, and when we start to let this stuff, these guards down, these masks down, um, it can be pretty disorienting for people. But when we do, that's when things start to change. It's when something beautiful bubbles up, and I can use language like in the Jamjong, you need to relax, and relaxing is a really tricky word because people think when I relax, the volume goes down. And
right.
actually, often when people deeply relax, everything turns up. It gets
Yeah.
huge. And that's scary because it wasn't with the contract we had was I'll do this and then I'll feel better. I'll feel like calm. And often then instead you become this open vessel and this live wire. And that's part of the process of okay, I'm not actually going to block my experience with control. I'm going to let it open and open and open and open. And back to your maybe part of the conversation, the Tandem is a way for us to move through the world wide open and be able to function from this place. And 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 it's a real alchemy. It's a real alchemy aspect there. So the tendon, we think the tendon's this place in our belly, but actually the tendon changes, and it can be the room. It can be my relation with another person. It can be through my body, and but it becomes this way of orienting in space that you can come from this deep place and be wide open. This is something that I feel honestly hasn't really made it to the West yet. I don't think it's that part um, has really made it, and I really hope it does. And I'm doing it in my own weird way, but I hope that part really comes through to the energetic aspect needs to come through.
The energetic embodied. I mean, Mato talks about I mean, he's taking from other masters in the past and his own
Yeah,
teachers, but awakening, penetrating every cell of the body, and
yeah,
then functioning from
yeah, yeah,
that power.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I like that penetrating. I like that. I like that. I like translucent. I like transparent. I like penetrating. I like pummeled. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you did have before we go, we did have a question about you did kind of want to talk maybe about how breath and posture and
oh yeah,
you go together. Do you want to can I say something about that real quick?
yeah. Please do, please do.
Um so so I think that again it's a big topic, but you learn techniques. Often you get techniques in whatever um, whatever form of meditation you're learning. Okay, and often in the Rinzai world, often for us we would exhale completely, exhale, 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 all the way to the end, and that exhaling would over time it would start to unify the system. And that would, and along with the tandem, and that would the whole body would start to be this kind of one arrow moving in one direction, and you'd be looking out, and you'd be exhaling. You're looking at something, and you're exhaling, and and so the breathing is a way to bring the person into unification, and then start to have samadhi kind of take over more and more, where they were scattered, where they were fighting themselves, where they were all over the place. It starts to come into to oneness, and and so that process, as you go along, the breath starts to unify more and more with the energy, and the posture goes along with that. So often they teach about posture, but I don't really, I believe in like there's a basic template for posture, but I want it to come from this unification, this energetic aspect. You'll see people looking really good, but there ain't nothing happening inside, right? And so over time, again, what I was saying is the what will happen is the focus and the energy and the breath, they'll start to become the same thing. And so again, when I'm doing something, that's why work can be really good. Physical activity can be really good. When I'm doing something, I start to see, oh, my breath is actually doing, my breath is doing that. My focus, my breath, they're all the same thing. So when I focus on something, I'm actually, my whole system is unified in that. And and I don't think that's talked about too much. So I want to kind of bring that
Yeah.
out. It's yeah, it's part of the cellular process of how you put the rubber to the road.
And then that's samadhi in action, that you get in that kind of residential training in work and motion and ritual, in all of that choreography. Um, yeah, that's not brought out in almost any uh, talking or writing about it. It's all on the seated posture, or a specific kind of walking meditation, and then the whole rest of the picture, all of the other activities of life. There's very little instruction or writing or talking about how you bring. You never leave that state. You
Yeah,
make it seamless. You never leave that constant cultivation, uh,
right,
with the
right.
breath and the posture and movement and activity, and
Yeah,
bringing that
yeah.
all together. That's not talked about very much,
Talked about.
or
It's
written about, or
written about.
known that that's
Right.
such a large part of uh, that process.
It
Um,
is. No, that's so true. And yeah, so you know, I try to bring people into this fascination and how can I walk around with this? How can I explore that? And that way I feel like we're all kind of these artists learning how to do this. And you have to have um, permission to explore and to suspend disbelief, and all these things need to be there and in that process. Um, and so that's I think that's a lot of what I'm trying to do with the standing partly. The standing was really beneficial for me in the beginning, but with the standing and then the non-directed that I do, it's this kind of way of seeing, okay, if my context changes, how can I still stay with it? And then if I'm walking, how do I still stay with it? How do I and people can't. They can't do it. Not for a long time. And and so that creativity in there, that kufu, that creativity, is much of what I'm interested in. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. What about you? Anything else?
Hmm. So if someone listens to this and something catches, and maybe it's already stoked, or maybe there's just a spark, and there's a sliver, there's a trickle, an itch of this doubt.
Yeah.
What am I? What is this? What would you say to that person listening to this?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's happening for you right now? What's actually happening for you right now? And like, what are you feeling right now? And can you explore that? Can you feel that? Can you and I would say you need a teacher for a little while. I don't know that you need to live them forever, but you need you need somebody coming from this place that knows it so well, that has such faith in it that you believe in it, and then you can trust your process. Um, if anybody, if I can do this, I can have touched this and worked with it, then anybody can, because I'm nothing special at all. And so everybody can do this. And it's trying to happen. The very thing that you want to happen is trying to happen. And the more you can get a sense of that, more you can get the feedback that that's clear, then your life will just start to really change. It'll change, and you'll see the universe is not against me, but I can feel that, and I can live in this way that's connected to that and deeply change.
All right. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Corey. Where should people go to find your work, and if they want to work with you in classes or one on one, where should I direct folks?
Um, Substack is nice for reading. If you want to read, if you don't want to read, I totally get that. You know, I have my website, Corey Hess Body Therapy. But I think they should join a class, and we're doing several retreats this year. Where are we going? We might go to Brazil, and then we're doing Berlin, San Diego, and I think we're going to do one in West Virginia in the fall. Um, so I would come to a retreat or come to a class, and maybe there's this part of you that feels like it's blowing up inside, or your cells can't you can't be in your skin, and just come and explore that. You don't need to believe anything. So yeah, Corey Hess Body Therapy. Yeah, that's it, I guess.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
man.
Thanks
Hey,
everybody for
nice
tuning
to
in.
chat with you.
Yeah, likewise.
That was
Likewise.
fun.
Yeah.
Okay.